able to come on here with you tonight and just be able to share everything with all the people out there.
We're getting it. I'm setting up the camera.
I will say, Bernie, I didn't realize there was so many bottled in bond bottles until I started pulling them out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's another one. Wait a second. I didn't even realize that was a bottle, and it just kept going, and I don't even know that I got them all up here. So
right. Yeah.
I only got the Heaven Hill stuff up here. I didn't even get anything else.
Yeah, some of those new riffs behind you are they're bottle and bond, but people don't know it because it's blown into the glass, so you don't really notice it.
Yeah, and there's some great bottled and bond stuff out there, but it's obviously we're going to talk about it more. But what you promote with that and what that's done for the bourbon world is amazing. But what Heaven Hill has done with it, to the degree that they have from what I consider like top of the line, like in some of these, to just everyday bottles that you can pick up. So
right.
All right, we're live on YouTube. I'm quick. I just went off the. I'm quick. Gonna leave a message and we'll get started in a sec. All right. There we go. All right. Just want to join it live. All right, chat. On YouTube, we get a lot of people from Russia and India, so we'll monitor. Walker, if I saw that you were here, maybe give us a little, at least translate some of the comments if you can. All right, welcome.
Oh, Jamie's the first one to answer the question that Tim put out there. So we'll see. So Tim asked earlier, while you're getting this going, there was a movie that the JTS Brown was mentioned in, and it was a famous motion picture. So he asked who knew, and I, as much as I love JTS Brown, I didn't know the answer, so I feel really bad about this. But there's been a couple answers so far in here.
There's two movies it was in, actually, and they were related.
Ooh, the plot thickens.
Mm-hmm. Grab my bottle of JTS.
I have a bottle of JTS Brown too, but I got so much Heaven Hill that it got a little crowded, and it seems like it has for you guys too.
I know I got a lot more over there, but just don't have no room to put them out. But
listen, I have a barrel over there with, so we don't even.
Oh.
There you go.
Awesome.
I'm gonna do the handle tonight, Bernie. The handle of JTS Brown, and the plastic jug is one of my favorites.
Yeah, this one here is from.
Oh, that's
from
cool.
1977 right there.
Oh,
nice.
That's almost my birth year.
That's real whiskey.
Oh, that's
bourbon.
Cool.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so we are ready to get going. We're live on YouTube and Facebook. Everybody, thanks for joining us. One guy says you don't speak Rusky. Yeah, exactly. But all right, so we'll get it started, and there'll be, like I said, about a 30-second quiet time, and then when you'll hit, hopefully tonight you guys can hear the music. That's the goal. I changed microphones. I tried my best to get it so that the noise canceling is off. So let's see how it goes. All right. You guys let me know when it's done. So I'm going to hit start recording. Here we go. There we go.
Sounds amazing.
Drinking bourbon, sipping on some scotch. We get a little wild and show fun to watch. We love what we do, we're drinking every brew. Man, it's awesome, but we're telling the truth. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon boys, raising from hell and making some noise. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon boys, we're here to have fun and we hope you enjoy. We're here to have fun. Yeah.
All right. Welcome back to another podcast of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. Tiny here tonight. We are full out in the house. It's amazing. This podcast is something that I've been looking forward to for a while now, probably the last 5 years. But we have Bernie Lubbers, Mr. Bottled and Bond, Heaven Hill Bourbon Ambassador. Welcome, Bernie, to the podcast.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you guys. I'd rather be in person, but it's good to see your faces on Zoom.
Yeah, we definitely would rather.
We always like it for it to be in person, but this is the next best thing.
Yes, for sure. Well, we can make it happen eventually, right? Hopefully.
Absolutely.
And then we got CT on tonight. Hey, CT.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
And we
Excited to be here. I think everybody knows that it's been a lot for me to contain this podcast for the last month and a half, to not like leak it, to tell people about it. I wanted it to be a surprise because Bernie is that guy. Like, I think that people in the industry know Bernie is that guy, but outside, there's a lot of people that watch this that probably don't realize the impact that this guy has on it. So I'm super excited, super humble to be here tonight. This is going to be fun.
excellent. And we got Super Nash in the house.
In the house. Yeah.
So
That's a good one.
we were
Hey, just so we know, Bernie, they bought these shirts together. They wanted to buy one. I was unwilling to buy that same shirt. So I ended up with the Mellow Corn sweatshirt instead, because I just couldn't do it.
I think you're all winners. You're all winners.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
well, Bernie might even remember because we bought it before the barrel pick that we went on with Bernie.
Yep.
And we were both wearing it at the same time, and he's probably like, what is going on?
Jeff wanted to be my twin that day.
Yeah.
That's right. That was a fun pick.
It sure was.
Yeah, definitely. It was, there was a lot. The whole experience was fantastic. And to have you there, we were honored for that. And
Yes.
that was one time that we all were together, and you were there too. And it was, as you said, we were drinking some good bourbon, barrel strength Elijah Craig that day. And the pick, which we can get into in a little bit, but you basically have a bottle of it now. I know that CT was able to get that. That barrel yielded only 72 bottles. So
Yeah.
that was very unique considering that I had sold 76 when they finally let me know how many bottles there were there. This was, in the end, this was my only bottle that I was able to. And I know CT had two.
Mine too.
Yeah, so we all had to fulfill the needs of our club members over ours, because otherwise some people weren't going to get what they had asked for. So that was kind of.
And I think, Jeff, you're right, because I think this bottle that I have that's almost gone is the bottle that we used to sample from for people when they picked up their bottles. So that's how I ended up with it on top of the other one. So
Yeah. Yes. So
hey, the other cool thing about that, fun fact, Bernie knows this. This was not the barrel that Bernie picked. Bernie had picked.
Not my pick. They're not my picks. It's your all's picks.
but that's the beautiful thing of a pick is Bernie had another one that he liked a little better because I think he even said it kind of followed the profile of Elijah Craig a little more. But this one had a little fun, and I think we even named it that on the bottle, was that this had a honey note that was kind of unique and wild, and so we went with that.
And another thing about that pick too was that we wound up, everybody was like half and half on 2 barrels. And then Bernie suggested that we blind it. And a lot of people, when we blinded it, wound up picking this one over than their original choice. And which made it a unique way of picking the barrel.
Yeah, it's the only way you can do it is take everything, all your bias out, and do it blind.
yeah. It just.
Yeah, I agree. That was totally awesome the way we did that, and it wound up perfect.
Yeah, definitely. So just a few questions lately. What have you been up to, Bernie?
Oh my gosh! Well, it's just been it's the end of our fiscal year. Was the end of April, so that's always a big thing. We don't go on a calendar year at Heaven Hill. We go on a fiscal year, and so we closed out strong. And I'm telling you what, Heaven Hill closed out strong. We're outperforming the industry, and it was a good year for us. And I'm just down in Florida for a week or so, and doing my gig, just traveling around and doing what I do.
Hey, Bernie, speaking of that, because I don't know that everybody understands the sheer amount of volume that Heaven Hill does. How many barrels would you say approximately they're doing a day now?
Well, we do 1,500 barrels a day, 5 days a week. We also fired up the new Distillery Springs in Bardstown. That's really exciting for us. So we have a brand new distillery that has opened up. The first time we have distilled since 1996 in the tragic fire in November of '96. And so it's not going to full capacity. You don't want to do that with a brand new facility. You want to crawl before you walk. But yeah, we're doing 1,500 barrels a day plus what we're making at Springs. So we're cranking it out.
Awesome.
Well,
wow, that is great numbers too.
The field that when anybody who visits Bardstown, there is basically a field that when I first started visiting was a couple rickhouses way in the back. And now the rickhouses are completely filled, up to, almost to the street. You can just see that you guys have been just building the rickhouses and getting that supply up. But that's just an amazing accomplishment, especially when you drive around the Bardstown area. You have to admit, it used to be a lot more open, correct?
Yeah, well, that you're talking about our Barrel Preserve and Hibbs Farm, and those were there was that wasn't that long ago. There wasn't anything there, and now there's it's pretty much jam packed. So we have around 70 rickhouses now. We've decommissioned some. We have had to tear some down because just like anything else, it gets age on it, and you don't want buildings that hold tens of millions of pounds of stuff above your head. You don't want that to be unsafe. So sometimes you have to decommission. But right now we have about 2.1 million barrels in inventory. That's it's about 20% of the world's bourbon supply. And when
Wow.
you think about that, that's kind of staggering. And
Yeah,
to
it is.
think that one family owns it, it's we are still a lot of companies our size have had to go public or sell to someone, conglomerate or something. And our family is very staunchly family owned and operated. So owned by the Shapira family, the same family that started us 90 years ago, coming up. And that's the coolest aspect is to
Yeah.
be
Amazing.
able to say that.
Amazing in this market today, and we're seeing it in the bourbon world, especially now, even in the spirits world, that companies are not as strong as maybe they thought they were, but family that's owned it for 90 years is probably pretty stinking strong.
Yeah, and they run the company too. So they are Max Shapira, is second generation owner, and our executive chair. He goes into work 6 days a week. Still, and he says he's never worked a day in his life. Although I know that's not true, but he says he has so much fun doing it. And his daughter and son-in-law, Kate and Alan, they're our co-presidents, and they run the company. They aren't just like a figurehead and saying, oh, isn't this cool that we own a yacht and a mansion in the south of France, and they live here in Kentucky. They drive to work. They show up every day. It's a fun industry. That kind of energy and that excitement trickles down to us, and we get excited about it too.
That's true passion right there, when they can do and have the foresight and the knowledge that they do, and to continue to run it as well as they do and have those staggering numbers that you just mentioned. That's just awesome.
Well,
Absolutely.
Well, I think, I would say after New Orleans Bourbon Festival last year, when we saw you, not this year, but the year last year, we basically noticed that everybody was talking about the industry slowing up and everything and whatnot. But I really noticed after probably after January 1st this year that the industry, especially a lot of the allocated stuff in the industry, has really started to pick back up. And like you said, you just finished that year and you finished it strong. And I really think that we've been able to notice a complete difference, even amongst the people that we go out and follow the podcast, how they were all at one point, probably right before, last summer, weren't buying as much. They all were saying, well, I'm putting in a patio, or I'm doing this. And I noticed a lot of the people, but now I would say after just this first half of this quarter, I mean, I just noticed it just start to pick up, and it's pretty exciting again.
Well, you'll notice too, like you might have noticed over the last 6 months or a year, that there's more Henry McKenna 10-year-old single barrel out there. It's actually sitting on shelf.
Yeah.
And I've had some people ask me, well, oh my gosh, I guess, it's not as hard to get anymore. So maybe it's not as popular, or maybe people aren't buying it anymore. And I was like, well, that's not really the case. But they go, well, how come there's more? And it's the funny thing about the whiskey business is nothing happens very fast. So I started at Heaven Hill in 2012. And less than a year after that, we had our first expansion at our Bernheim distillery in downtown Louisville. And we put in 4 new fermenters. And that is what you're seeing right now with Henry McKenna and a couple other things. So it took 11, 12 years for that to kick in and that expansion to start showing up in the marketplace. So it has nothing to do with today's marketplace. It had to do with the decision 11, 12 years ago. And that's the investment of, millions and millions and millions of dollars to make the bet that this would continue over the next 10, 12 years. And we can benefit from that. And that's what we're seeing right now. That's how long it takes. We're not making, we sell a lot of vodka. We have vodka in our portfolio, but this is an aged spirit. So there's advantages and disadvantages of producing every single spirit. One of the best things about clear spirits is you don't have to age them. So there's a lot less cost. But with whiskey and bourbon and American whiskeys, you got time is the most expensive ingredient in making whiskey and bourbon. So sure, grain costs a lot, barrels cost a lot, rickhouses cost a lot, distilleries cost a lot, but nothing costs more than making it and waiting 10, 12 years.
Bernie, you just said it, and if Jeff Crow, who's watching, doesn't put that on a T-shirt in the gift shop, then I have failed. Time is the most expensive ingredient. It is absolutely, that's, I've never heard anybody put it like that, but that's
the way I describe it is, imagine a Marriott opens a $200 million hotel in downtown, and on opening night, when they've got everything shined up and staffed up and ready to go, on opening night they lock the doors and don't sell the first hotel room for 10 years.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah. Couldn't imagine it.
Well,
survive.
Also, what's amazing is when you think of McKenna, the brand, you probably were on track based off of your marketing when you started in when you increased those fermenters and you started producing a little bit, pushing the volume a little more, and you kind of build up to what you built up to. But at the same time, you weren't counting on being the bourbon, the Jim Murray's bourbon of the year, where all of a sudden it made every single bottle of McKenna disappear off the shelf.
Well, that, and it won the best whiskey of the world in San Francisco Spirits Competition in 2018 or whenever it was. And let's not forget that at the same time, when I started in 2012, and that's just when I started at Heaven Hill. I've been in the industry since 2005, when there were, by the way, only 10 distilleries in Kentucky and 4 outside of Kentucky. So imagine that. Now there's 100 in Kentucky and there's 2,600 outside of Kentucky. So that's mind-boggling. But when I started, remember that Elijah Craig was a 12-year-old age-stated product, and it was starting to pick up and get some momentum. And we had to make the decision, are we going to keep this a 12-year-old product and keep the growth, keep the sales where they were, or are we going to grow the product? So if you keep the sales where they are and it becomes more hard to get, we already saw that what happened with competition and other 12-year-old products. You're going to have to double the price, or it's going to have to go way up because you've handcuffed yourself with that age statement. But we decided to kind of have our whiskey and drink it too. We made the barrel proof, the 12-year-old product, and we made the small batch a mingle of years, 8 to 12 years. And now we've been able to grow that brand to where it's now overtaken the sales of Knob Creek and is the number 2 selling small batch bourbon in the world.
There you go. I mean, there's so much that goes, like you said, that goes into it. And, and you covered that fact that now, I mean, that is the goal. I sometimes wonder, it kind of makes me a little nervous as the distilleries like yourself and Buffalo Trace are all meeting the demand because they have been upping production, and then they're also expanding with with the new distillery. It's going, like you said, it's just opened up and this past year, and you're ready. That stuff is going into the rickhouse but won't be ready for the certain amount of years. But my whole thing is that there's a certain aspect of this market that we all run around, and we're from the generation, myself and yourself, of we want what we can't have. So it kind of scares me that if McKenna's on the shelf and we can all get it, that might be somewhat of a marketing deterrent. But from the standpoint of sales of McKenna, then there's a lot of times when I talk to people about like the small batch Eliza Craig or the number 1 Jack Daniels or whatever, people that are collecting and are into the allocated really don't look at the standard Jack Daniels or whatever. They don't look at the standard product. But those products, like you said, the Elijah Craig small batch is now the number 2 small batch, and it in the world, and it's just selling way more than an allocated would ever sell, right?
I can't. I'm not going to speak for our marketing department or our ownership, but I've noticed we don't like to have allocated products. You know, we're in the business of selling, and it's great that some of them are hard to get. And we have found out how, when we find that we only have 30 barrels of something, what to do with it. Now that we have like the You Do Bourbon experience, we can put some of that in there. We can use that for William Heaven Hills, which are around 30 barrels, and that's it. You know, that's not enough to get even in the state of Kentucky. You know, so what do you do with 30 barrels? Well, 20 years ago, we didn't have the option of selling it at the visitor center. Now
Right.
we have an option of doing that. We would rather sell everything and have things on the shelf. So yeah, it might be that people are hunting, but you've also got to remember that people in whiskey societies and nerds like we all are, we're only one segment of the drinking population and the consumers. There's other people that want it on the shelf all the time. So we have to look at it as producers. We're trying to. I've said the line many times. We are in the bourbon business, not the bourbon charity. Right? So we have to make decisions like, do we take an age statement off? Do we put an age statement on? Do we make something bottle and bond? Do we make something barrel proof? But we want to sell it all, and we don't want it hard to get. But now that when we find some barrels that we only have 20 or 30 or 40 or 100 or 200, we kind of know better what to do with those, because we have a pipeline for all of those now, where before we didn't.
I think that you hit it on the head. People want to find something that they know is good, whether they've been referred to it or they've had it and experienced it. And during COVID, there probably was no bottle that was more perfect for that than the Evan Williams Bottled and Bond. I mean, people started drinking this during that point, and they just found out, oh my God, this is $20, $25, whatever it was in your area. And they really started to just gravitate. It almost lured them into the brands with Evan Williams and Heaven Hill, because it was so good, but it was so inexpensive. And then now it's funny, because I'm seeing people like, wait a minute, we didn't know about JTS Brown. We didn't know about JW Dant and some of these other low-lying price point bottles. And now they're coming around to those as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of drinking. I've also made the I don't know if you all have noticed this traveling around, but I think the trend for barrel proof in the everyday consumer is less than it was, and I think people are looking for more of that 90 to 110, and that Bottle and Bond is right there in the middle of that. And I think that is something that's really cool. And you know, I love barrel proof. I know you all love barrel proof. Everybody likes barrel proof, but you got to look at the entire whiskey segment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and pour some of this.
Yeah.
Have a little bit of this Bottled and Bond. Does anybody else have it?
Well, I don't have that, but I have this, so I'm going to pour a little bit of this Bottled and Bond.
There you go.
Oh, yours is almost empty. I've been savoring mine.
This is actually the 16. So talk about savoring it. I picked this up probably in 2021.
Oh, yours is 16. Mine's the 13 from last year.
But on the 16, so that's one thing I want. I asked a lot of people about this, Bernie. But on the 16, when I first opened it,
it's a 13-year-old. I'll join you on the 13.
13.
Well, let's wait for that one though. I'm not ready for it.
Okay, so on this on this 16, my question.
19,
What?
and a bunch of the others.
So we got it at the gift. We were able to get it at the visitor center. It was a release. I was very happy.
There's a 14 right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what and one of the things was on this particular bottle, when I opened it, it was a little oaky. There was a little bit of some of the wood tannins of sometimes that I don't get excited about when it's over.
16 years old, baby.
Right,
16,
right.
You're gonna get some wood.
But my question,
Yeah.
I don't mind, sometimes there's a level, but this has now been sitting in the bottle, and you can see we're down a little bit, and it's probably, every 6 months maybe I've hit it and this was been 2021, I believe. So my question is it has evolved in the bottle, and now the wood tannins have backed off and there's way more caramel.
Yeah.
So do you believe, just like when you get into some of these older bourbons and some of the bourbons that sit in the bottle, that although they're not aging in a barrel, picking up more flavor, but they continue to age throughout the process as you go, when you open it, sometimes you get air in there, but also, you taste the dusty from the 70s and it's almost like they all have that extra flavor to it.
A lot of that's not aging in the bottle, but you're right. It's either oxidation. It's also the closure. I would rather have a plastic closure every single day than a cork. I would totally, when you look at old Dusties like this 1977 JTS Brown, it has a plastic cap on it. And when I open this, I don't have to worry about the cork has disintegrated. And now it's going to be so flat because all that air has gotten in there.
Yeah.
So you can make fun of plastic caps, and I even like it better than metal caps because I think metal caps look better, and that's why we do them. Consumers, when it's a higher end product, consumers see a cork and they take that as a higher end product. I would rather have a plastic cap every single time.
Would you say that's courtesy of the wine industry? Because for a long
courtesy of science, this is what it's.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying the corks. The reason why, like you said, the plastic.
Yeah, well, that's why a lot of wines went to screw tops.
Here's another one of your products that a few people have been asking about too.
Yeah,
And it's the Five Brothers small batch.
Did you see the message from Tim on here? So
Yeah.
Tim Dant asked, "Are you going to ask that?"
How's it going, Tim?
Nash, are you asking that question?
Yeah. He
Go
says,
ahead.
what about your special release Five Brothers small batch? Did you produce a limited number of those?
Five Brothers is available only in the visitor center. So yes. But it's our HH rag, which is what goes into Elijah Craig, Evan Williams, JTS Brown, JW Dant, all that. It's just a different mingle of ages, and we bottle it by demand and orders. So it's only available at the gift shop. So
and I always pick up a couple of bottles every time I hit the
it's a good one. It's got a good flavor profile, and
it does. It has a very unique flavor profile that I like.
Well, what's really nice is that one, the Five Brothers, and then it seems like the Heaven Hill grain to glass. Those are not allocated. Like you can walk into the gift shop almost any time, and if they've been distributed, you don't have to wait in line, in a big line to get them. And I really think that this one, when I picked up an allocated, and I picked this one up, and I think now this is my fourth bottle. It's a great bottle for drinking and sharing with friends. There's no doubt about it.
And the price is pretty good on that, even
absolutely. Yeah.
Speaking of good price, Jeff, that 16-year, you don't seem to like it as much as the oak. I was wondering if we could do a trade.
I said when I opened it initially, but now that it's been around, it's just pure caramel.
I'm willing to trade.
That's not happening. Get that away from me.
Hey, our good friend Greg Schneider said that he totally concurs with you on the closure of the bottles and what you said about it.
Absolutely, yeah. Although the decanter bottle is just a gorgeous bottle. That's
yes, absolutely.
Diamond crystal decanter from 1955. But on here, does anybody know who that person is in the middle of the text strip on the top of the bottle?
Hold on, I can't even see.
Is that the agent? The
United
text,
States agent?
Is that Fitzgerald?
No, that is John Carlisle, who was the Secretary of Treasury of the United States in 1897 when the Bottle and Bond Act was passed,
There you go.
Wow.
from Covington, Kentucky. And his grave site is right there in Covington. I visited it, and I had my JTS Brown T-shirt on and took a selfie at his grave site. And it's a very simple little grave site. So he was not, someone who was, had such a grandiose ego. He was, very simple grave site. And here he was, the Secretary of Treasury of the United States. That's just a
Wow.
cool.
That is a cool homage to him that y'all put that on top of those.
Because that tax strip was always, his picture was on every Bottle and Bond tax strip forever, and ever since they used tax strips.
Mhm.
So the red strips did not have his picture, but the old Bottle and Bonds, and that's the old ones, the ones that were stopped in 1980 in the early 80s.
Okay.
Everybody had to have this tax strip on it. Now it's optional. You don't have to have it. But
Okay.
But Heaven Hill still carries that tax strip, even through, of course, Henry McKenna has it very
well,
clear.
that's marketing's interpretation of
Yeah,
it.
but it is kind of neat that it still has
It is.
even-
It does. And on the old Fitzgerald, it has the spring and the fall seasons that are on there too.
Mhm.
And that's the way the old tax strips used to be. Always had the seasons that it was. Here, I've got a bottle here. I'll show you from. It was barreled in 1917 and bottled in 1932.
into Prohibition.
Yeah.
Wow.
Always had the spring at either the spring or the fall. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice.
Very cool.
So you obviously have a super bourbon collection. There's
You have one bottle of a lot of things, but I wouldn't say I have a collection. I have a lot of bourbon. I have a really nice bar, but I wouldn't say I'm a collector. Whatever I have here is pretty much what I have. I have some backups of the JTS Browns and all that kind of stuff, and I've got a few old Heaven Hills, Green Labels, and 6-year-old Bottle and Bonds that I'm. But other than that, I'm like you all. I got to go buy it, and we don't get free. I just can't say, "Hey, Max, I'm going to take out a 13-year-old sample." It's not the way it works.
right. You're not taking away the stuff that's being released, but I mean, what the question was that I was going to ask, being you, and people would obviously want to share pours. That has to be a consistent
Oh my gosh,
thing that happens.
So yeah, I have every month or two, and we've got a new teammate that just joined our company, and we've done work with him when he worked at Goose Island, and now he was with our company. We're lucky to have him, but so I'm going to have him over, and then I'll invite a bunch of industry people. I'll have Connor O'Driscoll, our master distiller. I'll have Adam Edwards, who's new on my team here in town. Mark Carter usually gets a call and comes over, and
Mark's awesome.
And then John Cecil from over at Bardstown, Danny, from Bardstown Bourbon Company, and we have such great people that live and work in the industry. Alex and John Wadle from Peerless come over, and it's fun. People bring bottles, I share my bottles. It's just the way it works. It's just, and we ask each other, what's going on? What do you see out there? What trends? And so sometimes we bitch and complain a little bit. We have the best jobs in the world, so we have no one to bitch to and complain to, and we don't have any reason to. But sometimes you got to bitch and complain to people who are friends of yours who only can understand what you go through when you're out on the road and stuff. So.
Awesome.
So,
That's
Bernie, to go back to a point about the brand, why does Heaven Hill focus so much on the bottled and bond, other than you being there, which obviously is a big part of it? But why is that so important to them to carry so many bottled and bonds when so many brands may only have one, may not have any? Why is that a big thing?
Yeah, well, and they had a lot of bottled and bonds before I started with them. That's one reason I was excited to come over to Heaven Hill when I came over from Jim Beam. And Jim Beam had, several bottled and bonds, but nothing like Heaven Hill. So I don't think it was anything that was planned after talking to Max and the family, but here's an interesting story that nobody tells. So after Prohibition, Heaven Hill gets into business. We make our first barrel December 13th, 1935. The goal was to make bottle and bond because that's what was the industry standard of quality before Prohibition, and carry through Prohibition in these medicinal bottles, right? So it said bottle and bond, and it was the only ones that were packaged, that wasn't from Scotland or Canada that was being bootlegged into the United States. It was the only bottle that was sold legally through a doctor's prescription. So in the consumer's mind, you had, hey, bottle and bond. I remember telling my dad, hey, I found this great new bourbon that I had up in Parma, Ohio, when I was doing stand-up comedy. And he goes, what is it? I said, well, Granddad. He goes, oh, Granddad. He says, bottle and bond. I said, yeah. He goes, well, that's the good stuff, son. And when your dad, who drinks a lot of bourbon, says that's the good stuff, it sticks in your mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So bottle and bond is what people had in their mind was the good stuff. So after Prohibition, you kind of wanted to make bottle and bond. So that means you've got to make it. And again, there's the most expensive ingredient, time. So you got to wait 4 years. So over that 4 years, VO from Canada, Canadian Club from Canada, Johnny Walker, Cuddy Sark, J&B, Famous Grouse, Doers, they clean our clocks, right? Because we can't sell anything. We're aging it.
Mm-hmm.
We could make some blended whiskeys and bring them out quicker. So that's when, you had your Seagram 7s and your Kesslers and Philadelphia and different blended whiskeys. But to make straight whiskey in bottle and bond, it takes 4 years. So for bottle and bond. So just think about that. So then after Prohibition gets going, the little bitty distilleries that were successful that only made American whiskey, and that was basically bourbon, were little companies like Heaven Hill, where old Heaven Hill Bottle and Bond became the number one selling bourbon in the state of Kentucky, in 1939, 1940, 1941. So, but we're little. We're just really in the state of Kentucky in a couple letters. Beam, they're bigger, but they're still not that big, right? Brown-Forman, not that big, not that big. You got these little companies. Then you've got the big four. So they call these companies the big four that became the big powerhouse spirits companies in the United States. I had the big three automakers, but it was the big four. Any guesses of what the big four companies were?
Oh, what was it? The National Distilling, that had to be.
National Distillers was one. They made Old Crow, Old Grandad, Old Overholt, right? All the olds, basically. They had that. So that's one company. You had another company called Shenley.
Yes.
Shenley had Old Rippy and Old Stag and Ancient Age and Old Charter and all these other brands, probably 10 High and all that kind of stuff. Then you had two Canadian companies, Seagram's, Hiram Walker. So they're the big four. And of course, they're selling and importing all these scotches and all these other, spirits. These are spirits companies. So as those spirits companies are going, and these are big companies, right? They're big. So when bourbon and rye and American whiskey really don't catch up and catch on by the 50s and 60s and 70s, you've got companies like Stitzel Weller that sells out, and Pappy's company in the early 70s sells out, right? If you're only making bourbon and American whiskey, you're kind of in trouble. Yeah. So what happens is you've got companies closing, selling out, and with the cocktail-driven Moscow Mule, the vodka becomes big, where it was never big before. You had the Daisy and the Margarita making tequila shine. You've got the Cuba Libre making rum really go, right? And so the clear in gin was a big monster with the three martini lunch, and so that's the trend. What do the big four do? They dump their bourbon brands, right? So that's when Heaven Hill and other companies say, hey, you're going to get, we'll buy these brands, or maybe they were offered to them or whatever, So that's how Heaven Hill has always been acquirers of brands. That's how we got JTS Brown and JW Dant, Mellow Corn, Pikesville Rye, Rittenhouse Rye. We got Elijah Craig in a deal like that, right? It had never been produced on the market, but it was a label that somebody threw in on a deal, right? Because they're just dumping things, right? And when they sell brands, it's not the. Can you believe somebody sold Old Fitzgerald to us? I mean, can you just fathom that, right?
Yeah.
But you don't just get the label; you get the barrels in inventory sitting in rickhouses. That's the money. That's the worth. That is the equity of a brand.
It's ready to go.
So when you're Heaven Hill and you buy JTS Brown, you get thousands of barrels in inventory. Well, even if the brand doesn't, that's money, right? So it is really interesting how Max and his father acquired these brands like JW Dant and Tim Dant's listening. I mean, we got those brands, and these are crown jewels of the bourbon industry.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens when we do the hard lifting and push the cart up the hill? I mean, one reason we call Heaven Hill a legacy distillery, some people call them heritage distilleries. I like the word legacy distilleries. And there's only 6 of us. Those 10 distilleries in 2005, when I started, were only owned by 6 companies. They were little companies, basically, right? But they were the only ones to survive from Prohibition to today. And then what happens when we, the 6 companies, start seeing this uptick in 2008 and 2009, and then, of course, really starts going 10, 11, 12, 13, we're really noticing, then the largest spirits companies in the world start getting back into it because now it's worth it again. So it's cool that Heaven Hills never, and the other 5 legacy distilleries, never have taken their eye off the ball. And I think that needs to be celebrated. When I walk into a bar or restaurant and they don't have Evan Williams on their back bar, I go, wait a minute, we're a legacy distillery. There wouldn't be any of these other 50 brands behind your bar. And they haven't been around for 90 years, and they didn't outlast the big 4, right? We outlasted the big freaking 4, right?
Yes, you did.
None of the big 4 are still around. Hiram Walker is still around in a capacity, but it's owned by somebody else. So we're here, right? And now we're the ones. So that's why these old beautiful brands, they just happen to be bottle and bond. And Heaven Hill had them. And you know what Max and his dad said? Well, just don't change anything. It'll sell what it sold last year, maybe increase a little bit, decrease, but we can always count on these sales. So there's no need to market this brand right now. This is a placeholder, right? Mm-hmm. So Evan Williams Bottle and Bond has seen incredible growth in the last 10 years.
Yes.
Well, we can't grow this brand at the same rate because it's the same mash bill, it's the same whiskey in the barrels. It's a different flavor profile, but it's the same. So we have to wait until our capacities get higher, and then we can take this brand around the country like we did the others. So it's a very patient industry, and one that you have to be so willing to do nothing for a long time. And then when the right time, it's like being on the crap table when the dice get hot. When the dice start getting hot, that's when you go.
Well, and you've just said it. It's just like that's what the whiskey industry has been all along. That's why it's historical, because yes, there's been upticks and these labels have been around for a long time, and there's upturns and downturns, but it's kind of like when the industry is in its downturn, that's when everybody has to kind of dig in and really, age the whiskey, stay the course, because then there's going to be a market when it starts its upturn. I mean, that's just the way it goes. But when you're dealing in centuries, not decades, and you have that perspective, and that's what the whiskey industry really has to have. From a marketing standpoint, it has to be decades. You're talking a decade before some of this stuff even comes to the market. But when you're talking about a brand, you're talking about centuries. It's like, and as Heaven Hill, they started in the 30s. They haven't been around since the 1700s, but they've purchased these brands, and now they've made themselves that in 200 years or when people are talking about it, that they'll be part of what whiskey. They have their own brands, and it's great to see the Five Brother brand. It's also great to see the Heaven Hill marketing brands. I mean, Heaven Hill bottled in bond. When I first came, the Heaven Hill on some of the brands, Heaven Hill wasn't really the promotion. It was just the label. There's a lot of difference, but now it's actually become the brand base, right?
Yeah, I mean, when it started, it was the flagship brand of the company. But I joke that brands are kind of like children. You never know which ones are going to be successful on their own and which ones are going to need help their entire life, right? So
Great analogy.
Yeah. Heaven Hill became more of a value brand just in the state of Kentucky and Indiana. Evan Williams became more of the national star and seller, and it's still our flagship number one selling brand. Elijah Craig has become a great brand. So we wanted to give Heaven Hill its due, since it's the name of the company. And so we took a lot of time and years to get those value Heaven Hill products, which happen to be a lot of vodka and rum and things like that. And then in the whiskey brand that were wonderful, had a negative reputation inside our home market. So we wanted to rebrand that to where it was something that we were proud of and the whiskey world would be proud of. And that's when we came out with this national Heaven Hill bottle and bond, and that that bottle of Heaven Hill 18-year-old that's in front of you too, and that 27-year-old and the 17-year-old, that's become a great series.
Yep.
They come out in the spring, and we have the 20-year corn, and so that took years and years and years of trying to give love to that brand, and that's the dedication and the passion that it takes of people like me that are the face of the brands and our master distiller. Master distiller is busy making whiskey. He or she can't travel like an ambassador like myself and the people on my team.
Right.
Jack Chode out west, and Adam Edwards and myself and Lynn House. We go around and we're the face of the brands in the marketplace. So it takes a whole team, and you just know that Heaven Hill name, and now with the grain the glass, I mean, it's really fun to see the name Heaven Hill shining again.
So
go ahead.
So one thing, Chris.
Yep.
Talk about the mellow corn. That's the one brand that
That's what I was just going to hit on. So
okay.
So mellow corn, and obviously I posted a thing today, Bernie. I don't know if you saw it, and I even I took a picture of the bottle, and I said, I wonder if Bernie likes corn. What an amazing product it is. But what I really love, and I'm not sure that everybody watching, everybody listening has true knowledge of what this bottle has now become with the Heaven Hill brand, because you just hit on it, that what happens when we age this a little longer? What happens if we age it 20 years?
Mm-hmm.
So talk about that and what this started as, and let's see what it could become.
Well, in mellow corn, I was asking Max Shapira, how did we acquire mellow corn? And Max, being just practical and a business guy, and just he didn't go. It wasn't anything that he was like had a laser beam on. It was in a deal from another Shenley or Seagram's or another company. And at the last minute, the way Max tells it they said, "Hey, would you want this mellow corn?" And he goes, "Mellow corn, what's that?" They go, "It's a corn whiskey." And he went, "Throw it in." So, there's the sexy story of how mellow corn. But I think in Max's just genius mind, he's one of the sharpest. There's not many people he's been doing this over 50 years. He can tell you the yield of a 4-year-old barrel on the 4th floor. He just knows how much it costs to do this. But we didn't have a corn whiskey, and with corn whiskey, you have to use a used barrel. You can't use if you can use a brand new barrel, but it has to be uncharred. Well, you don't want to spend $250 on a barrel and then not char it and do something with it. So you're going to char it first, make Evan Williams first, and then you can use that barrel a second time for mellow corn. So to Max, it's like free whiskey, right? I get another hit out of this barrel I've already bought, right? So in his mind, he did that calculation. Yeah, throw it in, So, but what I'm glad he did, because that's first of all, and then I asked Max too, "Hey, this is a small little brand. How come nobody else makes an aged corn whiskey? No other legacy distillery or anybody, small distilleries do." But he goes, "Well, Bernie, how many rye whiskeys were on the shelf 12 years ago?" And I went, "Like 5?"
Yep.
He goes, "Yeah. How many are on there now?" I said, "Hundreds." He goes, "What if corn whiskey's the next rye whiskey? What if wheat whiskey like Bernheim is the next one?" He goes, "We're ready." He says, "That's the difference between a family-owned company and one that's owned by stockholders. They have to sell what's selling." He goes, "We can wait and we can speculate, and we're going to do the things that our main competitors, which are the largest spirits companies in the world, how are we going to compete with them? We're going to do what they don't do." Okay? Wow. So we're going to make more bottle and bonds than anybody. What somebody who owns the largest spirits company in the world doesn't want to make a whiskey that you can only produce in a 6-month period. That's a finite number of barrels. Right. They want to sell millions of cases. They don't want to sell this, right?
Yeah.
But we do, right? So that's the difference between a family-owned company, and there's nothing wrong with a big conglomerate company, right? I mean, they keep the industry going. Yeah. But how you navigate and find where you can compete and compete better than the largest spirits company, and we're a big company, but I call us the Reno, Nevada of distilleries. We're the biggest little distillery in the world. So that's how we do it. That's our secret sauce. I say that Heaven Hill's house style is longer, stronger. We keep it in the barrel a little bit longer or a lot longer, like that 18-year-old in front of you. Who else makes an 18-year-old bourbon, right? Who makes this, who makes the 7-year-old bourbon, for God's sakes? And then we put it in the bottle stronger. So we don't, if Evan Williams Black Label, it's not just like our 2 biggest competitors, Jack Daniels and Jim Beam, 2 of the biggest brands and the most iconic brands, and brands that we would love to have in our portfolio. But they're 4 years old, 80 proof. Evan Williams is 5 years old, 86 proof. So you see how that works? Does it make Evan Williams better? No. Does it make it different? Absolutely it does, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah. Who else has corn whiskey? They don't. So if corn whiskey takes off, we have a 4-year head start on our competitors.
Well, I can tell you that the wheat whiskeys and the corn whiskeys, honestly, and the mellow corn has a screw cap, so maybe you had something to do with that one.
Hey, Bernie, I got a question for you, if I can ask. How many different aged products does Heaven Hill have on the market?
Oh, well.
I mean, there's so many.
It's just a couple, 3 dozen. I mean, we used to have a lot more that went only export.
Yeah.
But we pared those down a little bit, we're trying to make sure that our core brands get out internationally now. And there was a time where you could just walk in if you had a distributorship or and you wanted, to send it to Italy or Japan or whatever, and you could get it bottled under
Yeah.
another label like Mark Twain or Daniel Stewart or Virgin Bourbon or something like that.
Yeah.
But those days are gone. Now our value is, and we needed to sell that bourbon back then.
Mhm.
And a lot of that was older bourbon, which the consumer back then wasn't drinking in the United States. That's kind of a new phenomenon. But the brands we have that are national are Old Fitzgerald, Elijah Craig, Evan Williams, Henry McKenna, Larceny, and Pikesville Rye, Rittenhouse Rye, Bernheim Wheat Whiskey. And then we have the regional brands like JTS Brown, JW Dant, TW Samuels, and that. And those are, again, that's just in a holding pattern until this new distillery gets up, and maybe we can, depending on the demand for our other brands, we might be able to get a JTS Brown or a JW Dant around the country more.
Okay.
Wonderful. Hey, Chris, your camera seems to be froze. Is it seem
That's
that
what I was wondering. What?
I think you got a text or something and it probably froze it up. You should check that out. But I think he does have that Elijah Craig there, so we should you should open up our pick and we should finish off. This pick I was so the short barrel that we picked. I was wondering how it was so short, but I was going through today the shorts that I had put out. There you are. And the shorts that I had put out, and when we were thieving this particular barrel that we picked, I noticed that to fill the sample glass that you guys have, which is it was more like a cocktail mixing glass, that it took a decent amount of thieving to get it for the samples. So it must, and I'm like, well, that would make sense. That's why it was a little bit low down. But the flavor of this was fantastic. I mean,
yeah. Do you say what floor it was from? Not on here, but you all probably had the notes of what floor it was from. It doesn't matter, there can be short barrel, there can be leakers, there can be, doesn't mean it's leaking its entire life. It means maybe for the first year or so, it could have had a leak that naturally mended itself over time, but it still leaked a little more significantly than others. Mm-hmm. It is a natural product in a natural container. So anything can happen, that makes for a cool story. That's another thing about it that makes it cool.
That's one thing.
You wouldn't have that big honey flavor. I see what you're talking about. If it was, 5 gallons more, maybe that note wouldn't show up.
Right.
Yeah, the actual, I was extremely happy with this pick, and what it did into it just like it's fun. Sometimes you're not sure what it's going to do between the barrel to the bottle, but this really held its own going from the barrel to the bottle. There was no doubt about it. This particular pick.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It has.
It's 119.8 proof.
Yeah, but it's by far, like you said, some of the Elijah Craig's will be a little bit more peppery, less sweet. The sweetness on this is it's crazy. That's where you pick up the honey, maybe a honeycomb cereal. That would be a good one for you, CT.
Not pouring that in my honeycomb cereal because I don't have enough hardly to do it. So
you'd have to hit my bottle, right?
And that's why that makes single barrels or private barrels so special, is because when you think of a barrel, think of it as a solid color of paint. Okay? So you're an artist and you have a big palette that you're going to make a painting with. They're going to put out solid colors of paint. But to make its own individual color, they're going to mix those colors together, and that's putting together a small batch. But if you keep the individual colors separate, that's a single barrel.
Yeah. They're just so unique.
This just has a deeper hue of honey.
Yeah, and one thing that I've always found that even just from when I started really getting into bourbon in 2018, and what their attitudes towards bourbon was still a little bit towards consistency, and very protective of what bourbon was, what bottled in, that, and finished bourbons in 2018 were at some point a little bit frowned upon. And in just this short amount of time, now it's commonplace. The whole industry loves what would you say, not the consistency. They love the changes and the different barrel finishes, and they just like variety in drinking, and that really has exploded in those couple years. And I think you've probably seen that too.
Yeah, I was around for two of those finishes that were some of the first. You had Distiller's Masterpiece that Booker No brought out in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it was an 18 and 20-year-old, and that was with Alain Royer from over in the Cognac country. And they were just barrels that had been previously purchased on the export market, but then that company went belly up or something and then canceled their order or couldn't pay. And then Booker No, who didn't like anything over 9 years old, he's like, what am I going to do with these barrels? Because they were older barrels. And they decided they were going to finish them. And then when I came to Heaven Hill, Parker was doing that also with Alain Royer. We've done a couple finishes in the Parker's Heritage. We don't do that a lot. We are a straight whiskey company for the most part of it, but when we do see the trend, and of course we have our toasted barrel program in our Elijah Craig as well. Yeah. There you go.
But
Elijah Craig toasted barrel is really good too.
Yeah.
Everywhere I see it, as soon as it hits the shelves, it flies off the shelves. A lot of people like it.
I actually think the toasted rye is better than the regular toasted bourbon.
Yeah.
And even those are finishes for 2 or 3 months. There's still a brand new charred barrel. It's not technically it's not a sherry barrel. It's not a cognac barrel, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, we are more of a straight whiskey company.
Yep.
So we know that, that's what our DNA is, and we're going to be true to that. It's Lincoln Henderson. He really put the stamp on the finishing at Angel's Envy and all that. But, that's kind of their deal. So a lot of us do it, but we all know where our sandbox is, and we all know what we do well, and we all know kind of where our lanes are. And if you don't know where your lane is yet, you better figure it out, because the world's getting different right now, and there are going to be we're going to hear about a lot of companies that are gonna not be able to last. But like I said, when I think about this is not long ago, 20 years ago, there was only 10 distilleries in Kentucky and 4 outside of Kentucky. In the 4 that were outside of Kentucky, only one of them was a bourbon company, Smith Bowman. The other 3 are MGP, George Dickel, and Jack Daniels, which of course are competition. You got to throw it in, but it's not bourbon. But still, you have to throw that in.
Well, yeah.
But now, just think about that and how far we've come and where we need to go. So, but a lot of these companies were, jumping on a bandwagon, and I hope all of them last, but I just know that not all of them are going to last.
Well,
but the industry is healthy. Individual companies might find themselves under stress and not be able to endure, but it's because they don't have the expertise of a Max Shapira, who's been doing this 50 years, to know, oh, I know what to do.
Well, there's it's the whole thing. It's marketing, it's making, it's developing, it's know which way to go, the predicting. It's every aspect of bourbon is very
And the
and
right
like,
distributor. That's the biggest thing.
right.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah,
get you can make the
absolutely.
greatest bourbon
The
ever,
business
but if
part.
nobody drinks it, it's not what does it matter? It's all part of it, you know. And I've always known it. But like you said, there's some companies, you know, that can ride the coattails of the great market, but as soon as the market's even, we've seen it even just in that little slow up last year, a bunch of companies go by the wayside, and the brands or whatever that they were trying to do, and the strong ones were surviving, but not the main distillers. We're talking more about the non-distilling producers, and it became harder for some also to get through it, but it seems like they've gotten through it, so let's just hope. But at one point, you know, you were talking about there was a lot of whiskey being made leading up to Prohibition, and then Prohibition really took it down. We're not even at the point of how much whiskey was being made, and there was like way less people in the United States at the time as far as bourbon goes. That's for sure.
Well, I've got a I can pull it up here, but I think in 1969, Heaven Hill had 1.8 million barrels in inventory.
Wow.
Today we have 2.1. So think about that. That's how, you know, 1969 you wouldn't think is a top time for bourbon, but I'm
No.
talking about Heaven Hill, right? So
Wow.
Heaven Hill, that's how big Heaven Hill was, because they were one of the last left, right?
Hmm.
There weren't many other companies around, and the big four got rid of their stuff. In like 1987, I'll double check this, our inventory was down to like 380,000 barrels.
Where did the rickhouses go? You know, when you were up to 1.8 million, did they just? I mean, what you're doing in that field that we talked about earlier, I mean, that was just like amazing what happened.
Yeah, you know, well, that's why we all had to start building more rick houses when production went up, because we got rid of them.
Okay.
Let me
Here it
ask you,
is, 1967, 1.9 million barrels in inventory. 1987, Heaven Hill inventory plummets to 289,000 barrels, which would be the bottom of the American whiskey world, I would say. And in 2000, and today it's 2.1 million. How about that?
And growing, because you just put it
and
in
growing,
another
Uh,
distillery.
let's touch on this one question about the new distillery in Bardstown. Is that distillery ever going to be open to the public, or just a production facility?
Yeah, so great question. Right now, it is not open to the public, but we're looking to have it open to the public by Kentucky Bourbon Festival. And
Okay.
it will be something that we want to show off, because, you know, we started in Bardstown. So
Yeah.
we want to have it show it off to people. It has a built-in component for tours, so it'll be very well thought out, and you don't bother the workers there, but you'll see them and all that. But you don't show up to the distillery to take a tour. You still show up at the Heaven Hill Bourbon Experience and take a shuttle.
Okay.
Oh, that's
Great.
awesome.
Great answer. Thank you.
Mhm.
That's
And if you're
awesome.
going to come to the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, I hope you have your tickets,
We're here.
because they sold out in a very quick time. So
Absolutely.
if you want to think, oh, the bourbon industry's gone,
No
just think that it just took a few minutes to sell out on the entire
festival.
however many thousands
we
of
were-
tickets.
Three
were-
days sold
Jeff
out
and I had
everything.
this conversation this morning, and we was like, do you remember last year tickets were available
Till
into
August.
Yeah.
and we're on a downturn, and they were gone in days.
I was telling Randy beforehand, because we had Randy Press on about a week before tickets went on sale, and afterwards I was telling him, I'm like, it's different. I said, we have a bus tour, Bernie, that we do on the Wednesday before, and last year it was hard for me to sell. We have 8 people in our group that go every year, and so we had one bus, so it was hard for us to sell 6 more tickets for this bus tour. But this year we sold out 2 buses and I didn't even have to try. And
Yeah.
we even have a waiting list if anybody drops off. So I was saying to Randy, it's different because a lot of our fans I said, you don't need VIP, just come down on the general admission. And we probably have we were talking to about 100 people that were going to buy tickets. So when the VIP sold out and then that really expensive VIP sold out within minutes you're talking about, I was like I said to Randy, do I have to tell my people to get tickets today for sure? And he's like, yeah, we might sell out today. So it actually did get 200. I think they sold all after the first 2 days, except for 200 tickets was left. It was crazy.
I literally had close to 100 texts and calls and emails asking if I could get any tickets after it sold out, because so many people were on there trying to buy them. And I was like, no, I'm just a part of a podcast and you will be there, but I have no access to any more tickets.
So
think about this too. 2023, the Kentucky Distillers Association put out that there was 2.2 million visitors on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. 2024, that went up to 2.7 million.
This year's going to be crazy too. And so we're going to be down. I'm down there. We stay the whole week before. So we're usually there the Saturday before all the way through Sunday of the Bourbon Festival. And this year I'm actually staying till I'm going to drive home on Monday. But my question is there any time that leading up that week? I mean, you're a busy guy. I know that, and you're traveling. Are you just going to be at the festival, or is there any time, leading up on that week that's a little slow for you?
No, that's our Super Bowl. No.
I figured.
Yeah. I don't know what my marching orders are until, maybe a month before.
Okay.
But, I could also be in Chicago or New York the week before, so
yeah,
there's nothing going on for us here in town for the Bourbon Festival a week before. So, it's also National Bourbon Heritage Month. So I have a lot of requests for people all over the country that want us to go places. So,
yeah, you're
and then it's also 8 million customers in town and they all want to get together for a drink, and there's bartenders and retail owners and things like that. So,
that's
I'm
not the time. That's not the time you're saying.
I think I'm busy. Imagine what Freddie Johnson, what his phone looks like.
Well, you, Freddie, and Stephen Fonte. I mean, you guys are like so spectacular for bourbon. I really think that everything that's you've played an intricate part of getting bringing the people to Bardstown and really getting the word out. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Your personalities, each one brings an individual aspect to it, and it's just spectacular. I mean,
I've known Steve since he was in the coffee business, and before one of us was in the business, there's a joke that Steve Fonte baptized me in bourbon because we were at a little dive bar just hanging out. And I told a joke or something, and right when he was taking a drink of bourbon, and he laughed so hard he spit it all over my face. So, and then, which was hilarious, and we all laughed. And then he goes, "I just baptized you in bourbon." So I said, "Yes, you did."
He says it the right way.
Which is a song now. There's a song out. I don't know if you knew that, called "Baptize Me in Bourbon."
There you go.
Hey, Randy Price just said that, hey, Bernie. He just want to tell you hello.
What's up, Randy?
And then John Ritt had, so this will be the last question. We're getting long, but the Heaven Hill Grain to Glass. He's like new to bourbon. He wants the concept of what this was compared to all the other stuff that you guys have been doing, because it's a little bit different.
Yeah, so this is a brainchild. We're not the first to do this, but it's something that our owner, Max Shapira, has always wanted to do. We have a little piece of land that's not ours. It's Bernard Peterson's part of their plots, but right across from the Heaven Hill offices and Max Shapira's office. And he was like, what if we grew our own corn there? Right? And we used that. So we got together with Beck's Seed Company, Sonny Beck's, Bernard Peterson Farms, which does the farming, both third generation companies, and we're a third generation company. And so we use a different corn varietal to go into to this project. We're using the same rye and wheat and barley, but the corn varietal is different, and it's got a higher starch content. And what Max has challenged our distillers was, let's do something way out of our comfort zone. So you'll notice that they see that from my memory, because that's like 52% corn. It says it on the front there.
Yeah. Let me see.
And I think it's 52. Well, that we use 78 in our normal mash bill.
Yep, 52.
So 52, the idea was, let's let the smaller grains really shine. So we take the rye up to 35%.
Correct.
Which is a high rye bourbon. And I should know what high rye bourbon is, because I defined high rye bourbon when I wrote my first book, as it's anything over 18% or higher is high rye bourbon. And I defined high rye, or as Jody Filiatru with our company says, high rye, at 63% or higher. So, but that's a high rye. That says 35% wheat probably, but it's 52% corn. But it's a much lower corn grain bill than our normal.
And then 13% malt is high. I mean, right there.
We use a 12% usually. We use 14% for our rye, but that 13% is a little bit different. So, you're really going to taste those smaller grains, whether it's wheat or rye or barley. And Parker Beam always reminded me, said, Bernie, when you think about malt, people think it's just for that enzyme. But, it brings a sweetness, but it also brings that biscuity quality, that mouthfeel.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what he liked about it so much.
So all the Scotch aspects of it, puts a little bit, that's one thing that, people always talk about Scotch. It might be whatever, but that like being 100% malt half the time is something, but yeah, that brings it in. I was just getting into bourbon when Parker passed, but I think he was that was such a spectacular time when he was doing what he was doing.
Oh, he was amazing. He was amazing. And we were out in San Francisco at the Whiskey Festival in the Whiskey Fest in the fall. And it was one of the first trips I ever took with Parker. This was probably 2012, 2013. And we were at a restaurant and bar. It was known for its whiskey. And we were going to do a staff training. And we got there early, and they said, "Well, here's a glass of water for y'all while you're waiting." And Parker took a drink, and he goes, "Barney, this water don't taste very good." And I said, "Well, I'm just out here on the ocean, it's tough, And he goes, "Well, it just don't taste very good." And then he tasted it, and something hit his nose. He goes, "God," he says, "a damn cucumber in my water. They put a slice of cucumber in here." And I said, "Well, that's kind of a thing now, Parker. The kind of people putting, it's kind of a fancy joint." He goes, "Let me tell you, Bernie." He says, "I'm a farmer." He says, "I've raised hogs." And he says, "You can put anything in a hog pen, and a hog will eat just about anything." He says, "But a hog will not eat a cucumber. And damned if I'm going to eat anything a hog won't eat."
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, you go to the coast and you can find out a lot of different stuff that you never knew. That's for sure. But I will say that also at 100, I believe this is one I just looked. It's 121 proof. I mean, these are not what would you say? These are serious whiskeys that are being well thought out, right?
Absolutely. And they're now this they're only 6 to 7 years old. But it's the grains and the placement of the barrels that really matter. And we're just learning. This is a new project, so it's different.
Well, compared to like the Bernheim, this picks up at 52% corn opposed to a wheat, the wheat whiskey. This definitely picks up a sweetness from the corn that then complements that wheat the wheat flavor. The wheat flavor of a wheat whiskey's there, but then there's that sweetness of the corn that really makes it kind of a nice pour at 121.
Absolutely. And so what's interesting, we did the first year, we did it like we normally do. We entered in the barrel at 125. But for the second year, we thought we had time to think about it a little. Well, we thought about it more. And so what can make this even more Heaven Hill and more? So we are now from the second generation of this Heaven Hill grain to glass project. They're entered in the barrel at our original barrel entry proof of 107.
Ooh.
So you might not ever see it climb up to 120, right?
Right. It just depends on what floor and how it's aging. You're right. So, yeah.
That's so cool.
I mean, it's just like, that's one thing. It's got to be fun. There's so much that you guys are doing. And it's really cool that you brought the family aspect out, that they, and I can just imagine at 2.1 million barrels, how much experimentation can be going on. And with the master distiller that you guys have in Connor, it's just got to be almost like a playground at this point.
And the really cool thing about the grain to glass, especially for me, is this is Max Shapira's project. He headed this project up. So it started about 10 years ago, and he was 72. He's now 82. So that's the dedication you got to have. And this was his idea.
Wow.
And so it wasn't that there was, he did it with the brand managers and did it with, and I'm sure one great thing about Max is he can lose a battle. He didn't think that we should use RFID codes to put on the barrels to track the barrels. He thought that was a needless expense. And then he said, you know what? I was wrong about that. This turns out to be the way to go. So I love a leader like that says that he can lose a battle because he trusts the people that says, no, we need to do this.
Right.
And then he can say, you were right about that and I was wrong about that. So that speaks volumes. And then to know, how many presidents of companies could stand up in front of a group of journalists and writers and podcasters and say, here's what the grain to glass program is, and not look at a note card, but because it's his thing.
Yeah, it's his
he knows
place.
it,
yeah,
right.
And yeah, no,
that's amazing.
We're in good hands.
I mean, like any company, as it gets bigger, to get bigger, you lose you can't just do everything yourself. You have to be able to, dictate and give, allocate who does what and hire the right people. And the bigger it gets, the less control you have. So it's really kind of cool that, he pulled in a project for himself. And when you said 10 years, I mean, Connor O'Driscoll was not there 10 years ago.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
yeah. Max stood up at our national sales meeting and he read an article and he said, it looks like the spirits business is in trouble. Younger people are not drinking. Younger people are turning to marijuana. Younger people are doing this and that. And he goes, I will read to you that this is a Wall Street Journal article from 1986. And he goes, we've done pretty good since 1986. He goes, people are people and they're going to do what they do and there's going to be trends. But we are going to be here and we're going to be family owned 100 years from now. So.
Well, I always try and explain the difference between whiskey and why it was medicinal. I mean, at one point, whiskey was the only medicine on the planet. It was a cure-all of cure-alls, and some of it was, just, quack stuff, but other stuff, I mean, from a standpoint of coughs and colds and everything, it was what people used as far as sterilization. There was no doubt about it. And people that drink clear spirits, and I'm not, that is not aged in a barrel, and there is no filtration of those. That you can redo and you really have to have the distilling process right to do clear spirits. But putting clear spirits in a barrel and aging it for 7-8 years, what nature does to it is phenomenal, and there's no replacement, and it's better for you. It's just
Hey, Bernie, we do have one question that was mentioned at the very beginning, right before we started, and that was what movies was JTS Brown reference to, and you said 2 movies.
Yeah, it was this
And-
bottle, by the way. It was
Yep.
this bottle, this label.
Okay. All right. One of them, which has already been answered on the Facebook comments, and that was the Hustler, right?
That's right, with Paul Newman and Piper Laurie and Jackie Gleason and George,
Yep.
George C. Scott in
Yep.
1963.
All right. Now you
The
said
other one is the follow-up remake, The Color of Money, with Tom Cruise and Paul Newman.
really JTS
Okay.
Brown was in that.
wow.
And he had JTS on his license plate because he was then Paul Newman's character, Fast Eddie Felson, was the sales rep for JTS Brown.
Because
That
I
is so
actually
cool.
saw that
Great-
movie in
That
the
is
movie
great
theater.
trivia in history
I
right there.
remember
That is so
going
cool.
to see that. I did not, and I had no idea that's kind of like what the tie-in was. There you go, CT. I really have to, after that reference, I got to drink way more JTS Brown.
I got to work on my personalized license plates.
Yeah, you do.
Ugh. Anyways, all right. Anything else, CT?
Before we close out, as anything, I just thank Bernie for being here tonight. This has been awesome. And what I love about the bourbon industry is learning, education, history. The bourbon is amazing, but the education and the friendships and learning is what really pushes me. So before we close, and the guys say their thing, what's the one bottle we're having a pour to cheers with? Bernie, you pick.
Oh, well, it's got to be a bottle and bond if it's me.
Yeah.
Well, since Tim's on, listen, let's do J.W. Dant in honor of his family.
Hopefully everybody has JW Dant.
I do.
I've got.
You
I
don't, then use
exactly
Evan
that
White.
JW Dant, but I have an old JW Dant.
Oh,
There you go.
I do
Or
too.
You can use
I
Evan
got an
Williams
old
bottle and bond
JW
if you
Dant
don't.
too.
That's a different flavor profile, but the same whiskey, the same year, same proof. So
I got the same one he does. Here it is.
Oh yeah, there you go. Old school.
decanter. You know, decanters were used. That's where they parked all the old whiskey back in the day. You know, the consumer didn't want anything over 6 or 7 or 8 years old. So if it got older than that, they put it into collectible decanters. So
Yes.
that's why a lot of those decanters still have whiskey in them, because they just collected the decanter. They didn't drink the whiskey.
And look how clear that is. Just that's from what year, Nash?
Yep. 1968.
1958.
I bought my bottle in Kentucky, and I don't even remember when that was, because it wasn't always
Ooh,
accessible.
you got a black
around
top.
here.
I got a white top.
No, yours
Yes,
is white.
dude.
You know why
But-
that happened? You know why?
No.
Because they forgot to change the damn caps, right? They were running Evan Williams, and they probably switched over to this. It was a few hundred that got through.
But mine still has the price tag of $18.99 on the back of it. So
Absolutely. What's the price today?
yeah, it hasn't changed.
My first, I had
And that
no.
label hasn't changed since the 40s, and probably before that.
Correct. Yeah,
That's what we do at Heaven Hill. We hold on to historic labels and historic.
Yes.
Who's going to lead the toast?
You,
Ernie,
you-
I just want to thank you once again. And this is what makes doing this so much fun, is just the knowledge, the stories, the camaraderie and everything. And just, I want to thank you again.
Well, my pleasure. If y'all are next time you're in Kentucky, look at my social medias. I'm Bernie Lubbers on Instagram and Facebook and that. So if the Bottle and Bond Boys Bluegrass Band is playing, which is my bluegrass band.
Yep.
But if not, here's to staying bonded, fellas.
I'm
Stay
definitely
bonded.
friends with you on Facebook and follow you religiously. Like what you do.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for
Stay
coming on.
bonded.
Thank you. Cheers.
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 That's damn good bourbon.
Oh, that is the cherry on that Nash is just coming through on that. Holy
it
man.
is. Wow.
What's amazing for me, Bernie, is this bottle is readily available for sub $20, and people will pass by it and go in a store, wait in line, don't get what they want, walk out, don't buy anything, and don't even know that these bottles are so good.
They're bricks of gold down there on that bottom shelf.
I mean,
Yes, they are.
I love to make.
I recommend them all the time. A lot of people ask me, because I've got such a collection and tasted so many different kinds, and especially people first getting into it. And always that Evan Williams Bottled and Bond and the JW Dant, they were my two most recommended bourbons for less than $20.
Hang on, I'm gonna be like Bernie. Hang on a second here. Look, Bernie, mine's got a white cap now.
That's a little cheap. That's a little bit of cheap. But
What the hell?
No, people want to know what makes it different. I'm like, they were slow on changing the bottle caps is all. There's some human error here and there.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah,
That's
and,
what makes it all good.
and when you think about it for the price, and it's a bottled in bond, and that just right there tells you the first ever bottle I got was at the Party Source, and at that time I just picked it up and I liked it, and eventually I used it to make. I went down and picked up a couple bottles and used it to make our bourbon balls that we make. I got to get you some the next time I see you. I'll bring you some bourbon balls that we make. I'll use it. We make them with all different. What would you say? All the different brands, but I'll just the next batch I'll put some pecans soaking in Heaven Hill for some Heaven Hill brand, either Evan Williams or maybe Elijah Craig, and you guys
Or the
have
Heaven
great
Hill
bourbon
bottle
balls.
of
Mellow corn.
That's
Nobody's
awesome,
made
you know.
mellow corn.
Mellow
Nobody's had a
corn?
mellow corn
Mellow
bourbon
corn.
yet.
Mellow corn.
One of our tour guides at Evan Williams, Bob Batch, and he also did stand up comedy the same time I did it. And he's more of a veteran of the comedy road than I am. But he says bourbon balls, is that kind of like tennis elbow?
Well, my question is do you still do any stand up every now and then, or is it just pretty much bluegrass?
Our band?
No, do you do any stand up every once in a while?
Oh, I still do stand up when I've been asked to do it, but my passion's more in playing bluegrass music and that.
Well, there's no doubt we saw you when we saw you in New Orleans, and you do
New Orleans, yeah.
You did your bottled in bond presentation. It's you do a really good. I mean, you bring something that nobody else brings to
Thank you.
bourbon.
Here's something about bottle and bond that I tell people, and we can close on this. A good way to close out is, there's standards of identity that we all have to pass by the United States government to be a bourbon or a rye or a corn whiskey. There's a good list of regulations and restrictions. But on top of that, if you're going to be a bottle and bond rye or corn whiskey or bourbon, you've got to pass a whole nother litany of restrictions, like from one distiller, from one distilling season, pure water only to exactly 100 degrees of proof. You must list the DSPs from one distilling season, and it has to be a minimum of 4 years instead of 2. So undoubtedly, bottle and bond spirits are the most restricted spirits on planet Earth. So whether it's Mellow Corn and JW Dant and JTS Brown that are under $20, or if it's a several $100 Henry McKenna, William Heavenhill, or another company's brands, bottle and bond are the most restricted spirits on planet Earth. Then if you want to take that, there's 2,700 distilleries in the United States, which there are, and let's say that everybody makes 4 labels. So even like newer distilleries like Wilderness Trail or New Riff, they have more than 4. Rabbit Hole, they have more than 4. Let's just say 4. Okay. That means there's over 10,000 available on the marketplace. There's only around 100 bottle and bonds. And Heaven Hill produces about 15. Okay? So that's rare. So now you're into the rarest and most restricted spirits on planet Earth. Now, do you want to get to really, really thin air? How many bottle and bonds are age stated over 4 years old? You've got
I'd say less
this one.
than 5.
You've got this one. You've
Old
got Henry
Fitz.
McKenna.
Old
You've got
Fitz.
the old Fitzgeralds.
Gerald.
And I'm not even going to count each old Fitzgerald separately. I'm just going to count that as one.
William Heaven Hill.
William Heaven Hill,
Heaven
which
Hill.
really isn't nationally, so I'm not even going to throw that in. Henry McKenna, let's see. Ben Holiday has a couple.
And they're
George
new.
Dickel, we're running out. You mean to tell me that there's under 10 of something out of 10,000?
Jeez.
And this is available every day?
At about $50.
$50 or
Yeah.
less. At Costco,
Yeah.
it just had it for 44.
Yeah.
So, you know, you don't have to spend a lot of money to get the rarest and most restricted spirits on planet Earth.
Now, and let's just take it one step further. There are some that you would consider that bottled in bonds, but they don't make that. When you commit to the age statement, that means that even when if your stock gets low, that age statement has to, you don't want to do that. So you're committed to that brand even more. Whereas let's just say a Taylor, which is probably 6-7 years old, they don't commit to the age statement because they want to, it's based off of what they want to produce, because they can drop down anytime without.
It's a finite number of barrels from a 6-month period. So they probably just don't want to keep applying for a different label every year for a different age. I get that.
Right.
So there's reasons, and they're not trying to dupe you or
they're
weird.
not duping you, but
it's just that's how restricted bottle and bond is.
Right. It's but it's a commitment to it. You have to make a commitment to it. There's no doubt about it.
But real quick question: how many bottled in bond ryes are there that you know of?
Let's see. There's Rittenhouse. There's Old Overholt. There's Jack Daniels. I think
that's it.
That might
Not
be
very
it.
many.
Wow.
There's a reason for that, because it's rye.
Rittenhouse
Heidi
Rye
doesn't like
always
rye
been-
very much.
So
Rittenhouse Rye, just a regular bottle has always been good. But the state of Ohio has done some private barrel picks that have been super good. Floor 7.
And you
They're
see
fantastic.
you see that square in the front of that bottle? It looks like a diamond the way it is, but that square, that's Rittenhouse Square. That's David Rittenhouse mapped out Philadelphia. And when you go to Philadelphia, you can go to Rittenhouse Square, and that's Rittenhouse Square.
Well, there you go. That's a podcast.
Another.
We'll all go to Philadelphia and drink some Rittenhouse Rye in Rittenhouse Square.
Absolutely.
It's a good one to do.
Bucket list.
There you
Add
go.
it to it.
All right. So thank you, Bernie, for coming on tonight. We really appreciate that.
All right.
Thanks,
Great.
guys. I
Appreciate you having me. See you in Kentucky next time you come.
Yeah, we will.
Yes, you will.
We'll be down there for Kentucky Bourbon Festival, so hopefully we'll see you at the festival. And
I
then
got to see
we'll be
Chris
down
up-
there a lot
I
more
got to see
before
Chris
that.
up in Columbus a few weeks ago. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, all right. So www.scotchybourbonboys.com for all things Scotchy Bourbon Boys. Remember, we're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X, and then also on all the major podcast formats. No matter how you watch us or listen to us, make sure you like, listen, comment, subscribe, and leave good feedback. Remember, good bourbon equals good times and good friends. Cheers, guys. |And remember, drink responsibly, don't drink and drive, and live your life
Uncut and unfiltered.
And little Steve-O will take us out.
And bonded.
And bonded.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Failure, we must die.
All right.
All right. So we're off of that. I'm going to quick do the saving and then.
Bernie, sorry to keep you on here so long, but my God, that was incredible.
It
Mike.
sure was.
I can't even tell you the amount of stories that came. You're just passionate, man. You just get like going, and I love it. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
your personality, it just resonates and it shows, and your passion too.
Well, thank you. It's easy to get passion for really cool stuff.
Well,
Yeah, that's right.
it's kind of like in the industry to get to be able to spend time with you and everything that you do. I mean, your brand is spectacular, but the stories that you have, there's certain people that it's just so great to be able to get to know, share pours from time to time and everything. And we appreciate, everything that you do for the industry. And then to have you on the podcast, like I said, that was a bucket list.
Good one. Thank you.
Let me ask you too. One of your other passions, is it hot rods and classic cars?
Well, I happen to have one. I don't know. I wouldn't know if it's a passion, but
Okay.
I know how to work on them. And I'm not a motorhead or anything, but I do have a 1960 Thunderbird, which is a lot of
Yes, you
fun.
do.
Yeah.
I knew that, but I didn't know if you had any more, or if that was something that you also like, because me and my family, my brothers and all that, they're all into the old hot rods and cars and building cars and stuff like
I
that.
like them. I just don't know how to work on them or anything. I like driving them. I turn the key and drive it.
There you go. Hey, that's good enough right there.
It's getting new tires. It's getting the wide white wall tires on it right now, so it's gonna be ready for the good spring.
Awesome.
All you got to do is keep doing what you're doing and know people who can work on them.
It's like any other thing. You just take it to
Yep.
the mechanic when it breaks, and they hardly break when they're that old. They just keep going.
Yep.
Yeah.
They
That's
were
right.
made different. There's no doubt about it. And that's what in the summertime, you tour around in that pretty much, right?
I'm just around town. I'm not going to take it on. I'm not
On
going
the
to take any
road,
long
no.
distances.
Yeah.
So any new
The
tattoos?
windshield, it's $5,000, right?
Any new tattoos
Yeah.
lately? Any new tattoos lately?
I got the acorn,
Okay.
and that's for Camp Run Amok. Then that's a bartender's camp that comes down here twice a
Yeah.
year. It's really cool. I've been to every
Yeah,
single session.
I see several people that are part of that I'm friends. And they talk
Absolutely.
about it, and I see all the posts from it
Mhm.
when it's over and while it's going on. But I didn't actually know that was.
Well, they
one-
call themselves squirrels. So
Squirrels.
squirrels eat acorns. So
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
That's
So,
cool.
so Bernie, my mind's wandering to Kentucky Bourbon Festival. So Saturday night, Kentucky Bourbon Festival, are the Bottled and Bond boys around?
I have to work. So
Could you be around in the evening on Saturday night?
Bernie Lubbers has to work Kentucky Bourbon Festival. So,
I mean, after the festival.
Bernie Lubbers doesn't want to work 16 hours a day, and then after
Then you gotta
talking
get some
and
rest.
after losing your voice for 10 hours, sing for 2 hours. So no, not gonna happen.
Not going to happen.
Can't blame me for trying, CT.
I mean, I've lost my voice now, so it's tough. It's hard talking all day and then singing all night. You gotta take your time.
Or do
Yeah.
a podcast
Yeah.
afterwards after talking all day. Yeah. So, so how much longer do you see yourself doing this?
Oh, as long as they'll have me around, I've got plans I want to do too, but I can't see ever really just stepping away. But I don't know. I'm not Jimmy Russell, so they might just tell me to hit the bricks after I hit a certain age. Who knows?
I don't. Honestly, I think you've in this time period, you, Freddie, and Steven have seriously embedded yourself into the history of whiskey. I mean, have you researched other brand ambassadors I'm not talking about master distillers. I'm not talking like Booker or whatever, because they were making it, but people who through the industry.
Yeah, well, we have. I am the longest serving whiskey brand ambassador that's still doing it. So
In the
I
history
think
of it.
Fonte's number 2. And you got to throw Freddie Johnson in there, but he was a tour guide for so long. But
Yeah.
now in the last few years, he has become
The
a
brand.
face of the brands.
Yeah.
So, but other than a distiller or a family member, I am the longest serving brand ambassador that's around. So
Well,
it's kind
and-
of cool. I didn't think about
that
it
is
until
kinda cool.
a couple of people kind of pointed it out to me, because he's been doing it now. What? 12 or 14 years. I've been doing it 20.
And when you think about that, that you've made a actual, what would you say, a place that somebody who is just passionate about whiskey can get a job and be the ambassador with and infiltrate it with your personality. It's all about personality. There's no doubt about it. Your personality. I mean,
Absolutely.
there's not a lot of people that are putting the bottled in bond,
Right.
tattoo on a tattoo,
Right, yeah.
and that's
And that
part
was
of
15 years ago.
Yeah.
15 years ago.
yeah, and it's spectacular. And just same thing with Freddie. My first ever tour was in 2019. We took the Ghost tour, and it's like it took me a while to realize that Freddie was the tour guide that night, and he did our tasting. He hadn't. He started to become an ambassador, but he hadn't fully, where the distillery didn't realize what they had yet.
I agree. When I was with Jim Beam, and for first year and a half, I was doing events and promotions, and then it was me and 2 other fellas that was hired to be the first ambassadors of whiskey at Jim Beam that was not a member of the family or a distiller. And I didn't realize that at the time, or else I probably would have been scared shitless. But I was too dumb to be scared.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just like anything else, it's just like if you're passionate about it and you really do, you work and you put the time and effort in that as you have, and then you put, you have your bluegrass, you have your stand up, and that all is part of who you are as a brand ambassador. And that's something that people who love to sip whiskey and spend time with friends, I mean, you fit right in. I mean, like you said, people are always wanting to have a pour with you and share. It was great to have you on our barrel pick. It's an honor. It's just like something,
Right, yeah.
it's part of history, and that's what you're doing. And even when I've been there for other events and I see you there and how you interact with all the people coming through, it's just something that is special. And I think, like you said, Fonte, you and Freddie, when people, that's something that that whiskey has evolved, that's really helped. You don't just help Heaven Hill. Each one of you all know each other, but you're helping the bourbon industry as a whole.
Absolutely. You got a rising tide raises all ships. Jack Daniels pretty much outsells the entire bourbon category combined. So,
although the bourbon category is starting to catch up.
Absolutely.
And it's funny because you say Jack Daniels, which is a bourbon but a Tennessee whiskey, but it's owned by Brown and Foreman, where you're talking about Woodford Reserve, and then they're trying to catch up with Woodford Reserve and Old Forester themselves.
Absolutely. They do a great job, and the biggest stage of the world was and their highest ratings was the Kentucky Derby, which is brought to you by Woodford Reserve. So that helps the industry too.
Well, I'll also say, if you really want to come down to a prior brand ambassador, is probably Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin for Jack Daniels back then. That's
true, but they didn't have the microphone of social media and all that. You had to go to a Rat Pack show, or you had to be, to kind of be on the inside to kind of know that. And so it's a little bit different now that we have the tools to help us magnify our voices a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's fun, but it's not like everybody's doing it. You guys,
Well,
Heaven
most
Hills.
people who do this job is like an NFL career. It's 3 to 5 years.
Well,
And then
it takes
they
us.
either get married and have kids, or the lifestyle's a little too much and travel or drinking or that. We are drinking, so you gotta. I've seen a lot of people who the bottle overtook their career, and so I have a rule that I don't drink at home unless I'm doing a podcast like this,
Mhm.
or if I have people over.
Well,
But other than that, I have a strict no drinking at home policy.
and I understand that because there's nights that's the same thing with me. If I'm with the podcast and we're doing things and whatever, that's fine. But I try. I rarely have something other than the Tuesday, because we do it 2 times a week. So it's Tuesday and Thursday night. We're sipping, and then all the other times it's basically try not to drink, because
Right.
like you said, there's an aspect that could come up and bite you, but there's a responsible aspect that we all try and go by. So I can understand,
Absolutely.
especially with you.
Absolutely.
For sure.
When you're at work, a lot of times I'm sure you're tasting a lot of stuff and helping them out with what they got to do to get good whiskey. I'm sure your opinion matters.
Well, I get to sit on the innovation tasting panel, which is a lot of fun, with Connor and Jody and our brand managers, and that's a lot of fun, and we don't always agree either. Everybody's palate's different, and what I like is different than what Connor likes or Jody likes, and it's fun when it all comes together and you really give a thumbs up to something, or really go, oh, here's where we're, and they're all good whiskeys by that point. We're basically dialing in the proofs is what we're doing, and or making sure it's on track to be the next Parker's 4 years down the road, or the next Heaven Hill Heritage 4 years down the road. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, there's no doubt, but it also is, when you're trying to figure out which one's going to be the next Parker's, it's not like you're not drinking.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
All right.
And we have fast track things before where they were due to come out 4 years from, or the corn was like that. The 20-year corn was supposed to come out of 23. And we said, no, it's ready now. Let's do it now. So we did it. We did it now.
So do you have another one coming out soon?
Well, yeah, there's a new, there'll be a new Heaven Hill Heritage this year, and a new Parker's, and hell, I even forget what they are, but we taste 8 things on those days. It's hard to remember them all.
That 20-year corn is, oh my God. It's so good.
Where did you taste 20-year corn?
In Columbus, it was available to us.
Oh, you
And
suck.
we've got corn whiskey experimenting right now in brand new, uncharred but toasted barrels.
Oh,
So we
Well,
had to convince the TTB that a toasted barrel is not a charred barrel, and they thought that a toasted barrel was a charred barrel.
Oh,
So we had to
no,
show
no.
them that it wasn't.
If it was,
And
then
so
you could.
now we have quite a few barrels resting for 2 or 3 years now in a toasted.
That's
wow.
that's
So it probably won't come out under the Mellow Corn name, but we own many other old cool corn whiskey labels. So that would be
God.
really cool to come out with something that is a little more premium in a very special barrel.
That would be
groundbreaking.
That would be fun to do a podcast with Connor and you on a toasted corn barrel. That would be amazing.
Oh, and have Andrew Weebrink on. He's the head of innovation at Independent Stave Company. Who it was Andrew and my idea to do this project, and then Connor bought in on it, and then he got Max to buy in on it, and it became a reality in very quick fashion.
That would be a
Andrew,
podcast.
Andrew has such a great knowledge of barrels. It's just amazing. I was able to talk to him about 4 years ago at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival.
Yeah,
he is so cool.
He's great. So it was he and I were drinking a Bourbon's Bistro one night, and he loves mellow corn, and we were both just in our cup a little bit, and he goes, "What can we do? What can we do to really come out with something that's really cool with mellow corn?" And I don't know who thought of it first, so we'll both take credit for it. We came up with, hey, toasted's not charred. Let's put it in a toasted barrel.
Well, I find it
Cool.
hard to believe that TTB, that they didn't know that a toasted barrel wasn't a char barrel.
They're so overwhelmed, and they just approve labels. They don't have a deep knowledge. And they even told us years ago we have to police ourselves when it comes to things like that.
Well, I can see that, considering that if you put a bourbon into a toasted barrel, that no longer, you'd have to put it in a new charred barrel for it to be bourbon still.
Right.
So
Well, the law of corn whiskey says it has to go into a brand new uncharred. So for them to think that there's a color on it, that was where they couldn't.
Yeah.
They didn't know the definition of between char and toasted, because there's no definition in the standards of identity what a charred barrel is and a toasted barrel is. So, but we got it over the finish line.
Well,
that's okay.
That's good.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, realistic, char is a filter, and toasted barrels don't filter out anything. There's no charcoal filter for it. It's just flavor.
It's just a different level of sugars is all.
And so
it is.
now I'm going to spend the next days and months and whatever long figuring out what this new name is going to be. Because
No.
And it is as I recall, I mean, I'm one of the founders of it, I guess, but I believe Andrew told me it's a 22-hour slow toast.
Wow.
See, if Greg Schneider's still listening, that is amazing. A 22-hour slow toast. So you could call it a slow toasted barrel finish.
Right?
Yeah. Now that would, I mean, I'm in. I'm buying that all day long.
That's different.
It's sexy. I'm telling you, it's sexy.
Come to
Yes,
you
it
could
is.
say you could say come to our corn toast. Not just, and then you could have a corn roast with a corn toast.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark Carter's watching. Let's make sure that he is.
Cheers, Mark.
My Mark, you got to come over soon. We got a new guy on our team who started, so you'll have to come over and have some drinks with us.
There you go, Mark. Good. We're going to see Mark on Friday and Saturday. Mark and Christy are going to be at Moray on Friday night, and then also Saturday they're going to give us a tour of Old Carter. So
they're always fun to hang out with, and
I'm glad he's back on
Mark
track.
Is just a delight. It's just in his palate and what he does with his whiskey, they're just amazing.
Yes,
I agree.
Yeah.
We agree. We really all agree on that one.
So
Yes.
I think
Did he
I'll have
you
some
just-
of his right now.
All right, me too.
Oh my God, you guys are killing.
In your honor, Mark and Christy, I will pour some of yours.
I gotta go find mine. I put it up on the top
So
shelf.
what batch is that, Bernie? What batch is that?
That's 6.
I got 9 because of Super Nash here. He gave this to me for Christmas, and it's my favorite batch. This is my second bottle of it. All it is pure caramel. Mark's palate is
Mark's been over to my
fantastic.
house many times, and it's always a delight to have him over.
I'm batch 12, guys. I'm not as good as you. I had to go with more.
Well, Mark brought it to me, so.
But what's
I'm going. Mine's a 12, and mine is a rye. And is a.
I'm going to have to go with batch 15.
So good. God bless.
so the great thing is right now I got the Glencairn too. Right now,
You got the old Carter Glencairn.
yeah, they're in the process of getting another batch after a delay. Their newest batch is going to be hitting the stores soon. You got it in a Heaven Hill glass.
Yeah, but I've never seen that glass in the.
This is from the 50s or 40s, and I love it. It says the best of the great Kentucky bourbons.
That is cool.
That's so good.
Hey, Walker, I know you're still watching, so you're all the time out little antique places and picking up old glasses. You can find me one of those. I'll take it.
What did I kick
Here's
over
another one
here?
of my favorite tasting glasses. This is from the Roosevelt Hotel in New Orleans from the 1940s.
Nice.
Oh,
very cool.
nice.
Yeah.
That's why sometimes you got to stay at the Brown when you're in Louisville because of its historical significance.
Absolutely. The brown and the Seelbach.
Hmm.
So, all right. So if you want to bow out, Bernie, that's fine with us. What,
Cool. Well, I'm gonna go meet some friends down the street. My little neighborhood joint. They had a meeting last night. They wanted to ask me a couple questions, so I'm gonna head up to Left Field Lounge and have a little JW Dant and a Fall City beer. And my dad worked at Fall City Brewing Company here in town for 45 years, and my grandfather was one of the founders. So,
Oh,
I
cool.
did not
Yeah.
know that.
we're gonna have a Fall City and a JW Dant.
I used to when I was a kid, Fall City was one that we were always trying to collect.
The big red oval.
Yep.
Awesome.
Well,
All
cool
right.
deal. Well, guys, thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
And
Thanks,
Thank
Bernie.
you again.
yep.
Thanks, Bernie.
Thank you, Bernie.
I'll see
All right.
y'all.
Enjoy
See
your
on
you
the
evening.
trail.
soon.
All right.
Yes, you will.
Stay
Good night.
bonded. Oh, that was cool.
That was awesome. All
Yeah,
right,
that's,
brother. I think I'm gonna have to get off here too.
me as well.
I gotta do a few service reports and stuff, and
Yeah,
Got a big
I'm not
full day
gonna.
tomorrow.
So just real quick, it looks like Tuesdays will be our extension night where we have people on afterwards. Not this, but if we have a guest, I'm always going to try and get this up and going. Appreciate everybody who came on tonight and watched. It seemed like we had a lot of people on tonight.
Yeah,
So,
I think we were up in the mid-20s, far as I could see, as watchers on Facebook. We're still like up to 10 now.
Bernie brings a different aspect that is pretty fun to be in the same realm as him, I guess is a good way to put it. Just
Yes.
his knowledge. I mean, it's just like Steven, Fonte. When you get to be around people like that are not only knowledgeable, but are just a million times passionate for this industry, that is why is why the people that watch this are.
Him. He
That's why they do it. We don't do it. You don't watch it for any other reason than it's something that it drives you. You're excited about it, and not just excited about it in the fact that you pick up this bottle and you drink it from Friday night after work until Sunday night, and you drink the bottle and then you put it up and you do it again the next weekend. You do it because there's more to it than just that. There's more to just drinking. It's the enjoyment of friends and the varieties that are out there. I said it the other day. Somebody asked me why I buy so many bottles, and I said I won't finish probably hardly any bottle I have. I do not care. I will not drink all of this. I will not drink all of that. It's not going to happen.
Well, every once in a while, you drink all of it. Every once in a while.
He's right here. There's a few that I have like my normal drinkers.
Yeah. But there's always something else that comes out.
Or it's like I've got them up there. So when people come by and I share them with people.
Yeah.
Or sometimes there's people that say, hey, I've never had that. I'll send them a sample and stuff like that. And it's sharing it and, is a whole lot bigger part and enjoyment for me than to sit there and drink them all up,
Yeah, that's again. I'm not standing in line on Friday night or going at Friday night to grab a bottle to find my end at the end of that bottle by Sunday. I'm just enjoying what somebody put in the glass 4, 10, 12, 20 years ago, 23 years ago.
23 years ago.
I want to see what that's done and what it took to make that happen. And tonight, honestly, we learned a lot.
A lot.
There was stuff that was brought to the table today. I mean, we all are in this industry a lot. And Bernie brought some things to point today that were really pretty cool.
It sure was, man. It was just so much fun tonight. And like I say, I learned a lot. And you were told to just sit back and take it all in. And that's mostly what I was doing, was just taking it all in. And it's still hard to conceptualize all of it, you know? So
Well-
I'll probably go back and watch this podcast on my next road trip.
So then if you're going to watch it, because then you'll see CT frozen for about 15 minutes.
Yeah, thanks for telling me,
No,
jackass.
you were talking.
He waited about 10 minutes. We went on. There were so many questions that we were talking about.
I couldn't
before he
tell. I
ever
wasn't
said you were-
He
interrupting.
didn't say shit until I posted it, and I said, "Hey, am I frozen?" And he didn't
No.
say nothing.
I
until
didn't.
then.
I didn't even see that you posted
Hey.
that was your frozen.
And to be honest, I didn't even catch it until he mentioned it. I never even, because I was so into listening to what Bernie had to say.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention.
I don't
to
look
you.
at the screen.
Jeff
usually.
knew.
No,
Jeff knew. He
I
was
knew-
like, "Haha."
I knew for about 5 minutes, but he was talking, so I waited till there was a point, and then I told you.
Yeah, no, I knew what he was doing. He said, "Oh, CT's frozen. It's my time to shine."
I didn't say a word while you were frozen, and then I asked you a question, and you were talking. I don't know what to tell you, buddy. It's just like, what the fuck?
Love you guys, man.
Yeah, same
Yeah.
here.
Thanks again for another great night.
Yeah. Cheers, guys. Have a
Cheers.
good night. I'm out of here.
All right, I'm gonna end it on YouTube. Say good night to everybody on YouTube. That was a new stand and everything. So let's see.
Hey, thanks everybody for watching on Facebook and YouTube. We appreciate you all. Like I say, if you get a chance, watch it, leave us good feedback, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, stay bonded, everybody.
Stay bonded.
All right.